What's good, y'all? Welcome to Conversation Piece, the podcast about the missing pieces of the conversations we're having here in Indianapolis. I'm Patrick Armstrong. I'm your host, and I am excited to be back for episode 102 in the house. We're cracking open another 100, and it has been incredible. We have some really big announcements coming up, so please stay tuned for those. But until then, I'm very excited to welcome my guest today. My guest today is an award-winning journalist and former anchor of Daybreak on Wish TV. Previous anchor and reporting stops in Jacksonville, D.C., and Columbia, South Carolina as well. She's also a self-proclaimed foodie, enjoys all things fitness, fashion enthusiast, great music appreciator, and a lover of sport, outdoors, and travel. She is also an incredible host and MC in her own right, which is how I came to know her. And the best part, I have way more questions. So without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to welcome Lena Pringle to the show. Lena, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, hearing my bio read back, I feel so honored. Oh, I'm blushing. That's so cool.
You have a great bio. You've done amazing things, and I feel really lucky to be able to sit down and have this conversation.
I'm very grateful for the reminder.
Absolutely. We do need reminders. We talk on the show a lot about affirmations, and affirmations are things that we want to lean into more.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I gave you this little bit of an intro, but for folks who may not know who you are, do you mind sharing just a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name's Lena Pringle. Pringle like the chip, single Pringle. And no affiliation, but if they ever want to sponsor me, I'm ready. But anyways, I am originally from South Carolina, Lancaster, South Carolina to be exact. And I made my way to Indianapolis by way of journalism. I have always wanted to be a journalist since I was 8 years old. So I moved and did a lot of things within journalism. And as you mentioned, I'm now in a different space of life doing all things art-trepreneurship. So I am hosting, I teach fitness, I am a professional model, speaker. I'm also teaching some kids. So as well as continuing to move and try to stay in alignment of all the dreams. So that's a little bit more about me, but I like a lot of things. I'm into people, and I really love being able to come into spaces like this and get to know more about you, as well as get to share more about my story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that you talk about it like you're in this new space of life as an art-trepreneur, which I was like, okay, I like that. And then you list off all these things that may not fall within the conventional category of art. Can you talk about how you've came to that term and we're like, I'm going to embrace this as who I am and what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, so I've always had a passion for the arts. I loved watching movies, going to plays. I went to my first ever Broadway play, which was Wicked in New York when I was in 8th grade. And I've always appreciated art in that sense of being able to see visual artists or performing artists. And growing up, I also went to a lot of art museums, but I didn't really love like paintings and sculptures. I didn't really see the beauty in them when I was younger. I went to a lot of like tourist locations on trips with families, and you saw like the statues and it's like, oh, it's art. And you're like, eh. But anyways, as I grew up and started to live in cities that prioritize art, I was exposed to way more visual art. So you had the sculptures and the paintings, and I started to fall in love with just like getting art as well. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. So I was like, by the time I actually get into money, like I want to invest in art. So right now, even though I don't have it, I'm going to keep placing myself in spaces where I can see it. So within the past couple of years through modeling, I've been modeling now for 7 going on 8 years. And I never really, at one point in time, it was just a hobby. And I didn't really see it as art. At one point when I started, I was like, oh yeah, like I like taking pictures.
Yeah.
But then as I started to do it more and I got into these creative shoots and I started working for different brands and seeing what it did with social media. And I was like, wait, like this is art too. Like I don't have to just paint or play an instrument or be an actor. Like I'm walking art. Yeah. And so throughout the past 10 months, I've realized that now I'm both the artist and the muse. So I love fashion as well. Fashion has always been something that has been a passion of mine. I love dressing up. I love showing up. I feel like when you put on an outfit, that's how you're declaring you want to be seen that day. So I've always loved fashion. And one time I was literally in Jacksonville, Florida at one of these events, and I was walking down the street, and this man pulled me over, and he was like, "Can I take your picture?" And I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "You're walking art." He was like, "You're art in motion."
Okay.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "That's art." He was like, "How you show up, your creative style, that's art." So then I started learning that art could be really whatever type of creative outlet I deemed it to be, because that was healing for me. So by way of fashion, modeling, I realized that now I can be a muse and I'm an artist. So I look at art as multifaceted. It's very layered. And I believe that ultimately art heals the artist and it heals communities. So however your art is being displayed, I believe this is art. You speaking to me, us speaking, that is an art. So I believe that art is whatever gift that you decide to creatively express.
Damn. All right, that's the episode. Wrap it up. That was great. Thank you so
I
much,
don't
Lena
like
Pringle,
boxes.
everyone.
I don't like boxes. I like to exist without labels, without having to be conventional. Like there's a lot of
100%.
things that I'm interested in all at once. And if it was only black and white, then how would art exist?
100%. I think it speaks to, I love hearing it. I thank you so much for sharing it because it speaks to the multiplicity of our lived experiences that a lot of time we get pushed into the box of binary of this or that, either or. And I love that you're just like, I am the artist and the muse, like leaning into this idea that I can be both. And there's some other stuff over here that I can do that might not even have any relation to art, but I can lean into and create with what I have. Speaking of fashion, I read that when you were younger, one of the things that got you into journalism was like just watching the TV, watching all these stories, and then you were paying attention to the minutest detail, including what the anchors were wearing. Do you remember any outfits or anything like from the news that stuck out to you that you were like, yes, I want to maybe emulate that one day in my career?
So there is an anchor in South Carolina that I grew up watching and then ended up being in the same market working with her, which was a beautiful full circle moment. Her name is Darcy Strickland. And I remember that she used to wear these like beautiful, bold pantsuits, but they weren't like, sometimes they had shoulder pads, sometimes they had designs, but it was always her earrings. The earrings would always match and they would always be different. And in addition to that, she always matched her lip color. And I was just amazed at the colors. I always love bright colors. Like I love how bright the studio is.
Yeah.
So I'm attracted to very bright things. And she always had very bright, bold statements. And she also had short hair. And that was different too, growing up and seeing that. And at that time, like I didn't have short hair, but it added to just this overall bold look. So shout out to Darcy Strickland. She actually just retired after a phenomenal career. So either way, she was definitely a huge inspiration. And I remember her specifically. And I remember like eating breakfast and being like, what's Darcy have on today? Like, I was just so intrigued. And I would always talk to my mom and my parents about it as well. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. Shout out to Darcy. I love that we can take these things as children and really find a way to like seep them into our foundation. When I was a kid, I guess I would just always watch Jeopardy and I'd be able to answer all the questions and memorize the commercials of the toys that I wanted, prices and phone numbers. I don't know why, but I'm still kind of like that. It's strange. Anyways, I love that when you started in journalism post-college, you were able to do it in Columbia. And then, like you said, you're able to work with Darcy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience of being able to start in the place or in the state, at least, where you had been? I know a lot of people that I've talked to in journalism, they're kind of interested in going to like a New York or LA or San Francisco to chase some of those bigger stories, quote unquote. What was the drive to stay closer to home, if there was a drive for that?
Yeah, so actually, I've always had this wanderlust spirit. I've always wanted to travel. I studied abroad in college. And after I finished undergrad in Greenville, South Carolina, I was going to go get my master's in Syracuse, New York, at Syracuse. Go Orange. I told my family when I left for grad school, I was like, yeah, I'm never coming back. Like, y'all can FaceTime me, you can send a postcard, but like, I'm going to continue to live. Like, at that time, I had already traveled abroad. I'd been to a bunch of different cities. Like, I had this quest to see as much as the world as possible. So ironically enough, it was never my intention to go back home. So at the time, I was in Washington, D.C. after I completed my master's program at Syracuse. And I was working like 90 hours a week, freelance jobs, 3 retail jobs, just trying to chase the dream. I was putting in, I think I applied to like over 80 jobs at that time. And I was like, okay. it's going to work out. Something is going to shake. So one of my really great friends, who's still one of my great friends today, I went to Syracuse with her to race. She actually got a correspondent job in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
So at the time, this is like September of like 2016. I'm like helping her figure out how to get back home. I'm like, oh, I have all these suggestions. Like, I can put you on. Like, you're going back to the home state. That's cool. At that time, I still had no interest in going back home. And so she hits me up around Halloween that year and she goes, hey, like, do you want to come back home and work? And at that time, I was like 3 months into the job search, 80 apps in. And I'm like, yeah, girl, like, let's just go home.
Lock it in. Let me lock it in.
And so by way of that connection and my first news director, Daryl Hugie, who took a phenomenal risk on me, I was able to get my job, like my first like official local news, traditional broadcast journalism job. And it happened to be in my hometown. And at the time I was like, this is amazing. It was market 74. It was a really good market to start in as well. And my position, I was a morning show reporter. So I got to be on TV live for 4 hours, 5 days a week. And it was my dream. I was like, this is amazing. And at the time, now being able to look back at it in hindsight, it was such a blessing that I was at home. My family got to see me live out a dream that I had been talking about since I was 8. And my grandmother, who by the time I got to South Carolina was already having certain health issues, but declined while I was at home. She had dementia and she would recognize me on the TV. Like she knew that that was what I was doing. And it was a beautiful thing because my contract wrapped up in Columbia in December of 2018. And my grandmother passed away in March of 2019. And I always think about like, what if I would have let that resistance of not going home or feeling like, oh, I've already been here, done that, keep me away from having an incredibly different kind of an experience as an adult because I grew up there. Like that was where I grew up. But I did college everywhere else. So going back as an adult, that was a completely different experience. Yeah. And had I not been there, my siblings would not have gotten to see me live out the dream. My parents, my grandmother, my family, my friends, and also Columbia built such a beautiful foundation for me within journalism, the stories that I got to cover, the people that I got to meet, the experiences that I had. And I won like the Personality of the Year award. And it was such an amazing thing. And actually, Darcy was there. And I won that award from a person that was in the industry for 30 plus years and had won it for like decades in a row. And so something about being home was special. And I will always claim to be from South Carolina, South Cac till I die. Go Gamecocks. And I'm so grateful that that was a part of my story and that I got to have that full circle moment of growing up in a place where that was the dream at a time where it didn't even seem achievable because I stuttered, had a lot of other issues. And so then to fast forward and come back full circle and have that job and to make such great strides and be connected to people. I have best friends that are from that market and from that station. And I was intentionally placed there. And I'm very grateful that I had that experience.
Well, it's interesting how we find ourselves back into familiar territory in an unfamiliar situation. And like you said, you had the station manager who took the risk and gave you or got you into a position to eventually find yourself winning a prestigious award from somebody that you had looked up to. So somebody that had been a mentor and role model to you as you were moving through journalism. And not only that from a professional perspective, but personally being able to like build new connections with your family. And like you said, with your grandma, that it's resonating with me because thinking about the journeys my grandparents went through with their own struggles with dementia and stuff like that, finding pockets of remembrance and recognition was so important. And I just really appreciate you sharing that with me because I think it makes me think about how even in tough times, we can build a little bit of a stronger foundation depending on how we receive certain things. And I think when I hear your story and I think about, some of the things that I've read, it gives me like this appreciation or even a greater appreciation of like the work and the personality and the person that you are. Having met you a few times, it just is, I can feel the energy. I can feel like that purpose and that reason for being and doing through the stories that you share. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Speaking of, and the reason I lay that groundwork is because I feel like that then maybe launches you into DC and Jacksonville for the next leg of this journalist career, going into your first anchoring positions as well. Can you talk about the difference between the upstartness and taking the chance in Columbia versus the anchoring and some of the experience that you had in Jacksonville? Because I know that it seemed pretty different, but I just wanted to know, like, were they so different that there needs to be a clarification, or was just like, it was just a different experience?
Drastically different. Jacksonville changed my life. Shout out to Jacksonville. To be received from a city that I wasn't from in such a manner, I still have people to this day that reach out to me from Jacksonville. Actually, while I was at New York Fashion Week, I ran into 2 models that recognized me from Jacksonville. And Jacksonville was such a different experience because my job was different.
Sure.
While I was in Columbia, I was a morning show reporter, and I got very few fill-in opportunities for the anchoring stuff. And I did the some that I did on the weekends. And so Jacksonville, I was a Monday through Friday morning anchor, in addition to also doing traffic. So I would start my shift off anchoring the first part of our morning show, and then I would transition into traffic for the bulk of our show. And then after I was done with anchoring traffic, I would then go out and shoot, write, edit a story. So I had a trifecta of a job.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was working at the #1 legacy station in Jacksonville. So it was also the #1 rated morning show for the past decade. I was going into a veteran crew.
Yeah.
Like people that were like my parents' age. Like I was literally different generations, and I was like the youngster who was getting thrown into this wild 6-hour show. And the challenge in that made me grow in such way, like exponentially, like ways I couldn't have imagined. That was also during the pandemic. And so I never worked from home. I was always at work. And to navigate that experience, I also had a few viral moments that changed my life in Jacksonville, landed me on like the Drew Barrymore show, with brand deals, like all different types of stuff. I had very life-changing moments happen in a rather short span of time. Yeah. And Jacksonville, that city, the station, the times that we were in, the stories that I got to tell, that experience was just beautiful. It's so different. Like both were very great, but building the foundation in Columbia allowed me to really thrive in Jacksonville in ways that I wouldn't have been able to had I not started in Columbia. So Jacksonville really just helped continue to build the momentum, the skill set. And also I did a lot more stuff in Jacksonville. Like I finally cut down my hair, like I got a part, like I really stepped into fashion. I got a lot more fashion opportunities and modeling opportunities. And really like Jacksonville gave me the space to grow both personally, professionally, and creatively. And to have all those things exist in one place. And I was a certified beach bum. I love the sun. I love the heat. I'm from South Carolina. So knowing that I didn't have to live through a winter and I could go to the beach in December, I loved it. The tacos, the food, everything was amazing. I could talk about Jacksonville all day.
Everything was aligned for you. Yes. And it makes me think about all of the stuff that you were doing in New York when you were cutting your teeth, trying to figure out what you wanted to do to set you up to be able to not only level up what you're doing, but then anchor, traffic, write the story, produce the story, do the 90 hours of work that you're already doing anyways, but then to do it chasing the passion that you want to be doing it for. What's the break that comes right after Jacksonville? I know first I want to say and just affirm you, when I was looking up stuff about you, Jacksonville news reports all over, all glowing things. Like it's just all the most positive stuff. I loved it. I'm like, I need to pull up all of these. I need to make a database of these Jacksonville things for Lena. But
that makes my heart smile.
Yeah. You make a lot of people smile. So it's only right that is reciprocated for you.
Thank you.
You take is it a gap period? What does that transition look like from going from Jacksonville to coming to Indy? And then it seemed like from what I could tell, there was a break between reporting as well, or journalism. Yeah,
so after the time in Jacksonville, it was such a beautiful experience. But within that experience, there was a lot of adversity. And that was a very trying time for so many different reasons. And I told myself that I needed myself more than I needed the career. And I knew that I was reaching a point that if I didn't step away, that burnout was going to make me walk away from the passion entirely. And I said I didn't want to get there And I told my parents I wanted to take a break, and they were like, you're an adult. Adults don't get breaks. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm writing my own story and I'm going to get a break. Like, I'm going to get a break. The world just had a break. Like, we were still coming out of the pandemic and navigating that. And I was like, if anything we've learned, mental health, and that's something that I've been an advocate of for years, even well beyond the pandemic or well before it. But I was just like, yeah, you don't understand. Like, if I don't take a break now, I'm not gonna come back. Like, I need to take a break. Like, I don't want to lose the love and the joy that I have for this because of a temporary time of exhaustion.
Right.
So let me take a step back. And I was blessed, very blessed to be able to receive, by way of Jacksonville, it launched really my social media platform. I had been on social media for years before, but it gave me opportunities that hadn't existed before 2022. Opportunities that were able to monetize what I was doing as a hobby and as showing my authentic life, and being able to pair with different brands. And really, that was a reality I didn't even know existed for me. I didn't even know that I could do that and have the freedom of time. Like, I had unlimited PTO. I could travel wherever, and I was making damn good money. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to travel. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to have a recalibration of sorts. And that's what I did. And for 6 months, like, my family was like, well, and I remember my parents and like other people in my life being like, okay, so like, how's this going to work? And I was like, it's all going to work out. Like, and it did. And it allowed me the space to walk away from journalism. And at one point in time, I was like, oh, well, is this it? Like, do I return? And then I was like, I actually came here to Indianapolis for my interview, and I had this interview, and I was like, okay, like, we're going to see, like, if I'm interested in it, the spark will be sparked or not. And the spark was sparked. And I remember being in that newsroom and being just so excited, like, wanting to hear more about the stories they were doing, wanting to watch the newscast, wanting to go and sit on the news share. And then I had a run through, and I was like, oh, I'm back in my element. I missed this. And I was like, yeah, the break was nice, but this is my purpose, and this is what I want to do. So I went out of the break and moved to Indianapolis, Indiana 2 years ago. 2 years ago now.
I love it. First impressions of Indy.
So when I came in July, I had a very short visit because it was really for the interview, and then I was out. But by way of July, that was my first time ever coming in 2022, was that interview. And I was like, oh, okay, like, it's cute. I think it's cute. Because I was in Jacksonville. And one thing I will say, when I got to the airport, I was very impressed by the airport. So that was my first view of Indy. And I was like, okay, like, this is cool. This is a nice airport. And then when I was leaving, I was like, oh, this is an efficient airport. I like this. And so my first views, I was like, okay, this is a cool town. Like, I loved being in downtown. I love, because I lived in Washington, D.C., knowing that the city was designed by the same person that designed that city, and being able to see the similarities. And like, I love that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then seeing all the food places. I told you I'm a foodie. And then knowing all the things that existed outdoors. I love being outdoors. And so it was like, wow, there's a lot of really cool things in this city that I had never really knew too much about. And so as I continue to come back, I was like, oh, okay, this is cute. I like it. I like it.
I like it.
And now I love it.
Yeah, and now you love it. And hopefully here to stay. Well, we'll see. You're a traveler. You're a traveler.
Well,
we'll see what life has for you.
I'm gonna go wherever the big man guides me, you know? I'm gonna go.
When you were tapping into Indy personally, so outside of the journalist context, were there things that you saw that you were like, I need to know more about this, or I want to tell that story. Let me find out how we can go about doing that. Yeah.
So honestly, all of the creative things that are birthing now in Indy, I understand I moved here at a time almost like a renaissance. There's a lot that's changing in this city. So anything that was creative or dealt with the arts, my first experience of butter changed my life.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this exists here? Oh, okay. Like, no, I have to tap in. And being able to learn more about those types of organizations, as well as getting tapped into the wellness community. When I moved here, I joined a gym that I became like deeply like invested in. I was incredibly disciplined. I love the community. And by way of that, they connected me to a lot of other wellness communities within Indy. And so being able to connect through wellness and art and creativity. But I'll be honest with you, when I moved here, I was diving into all the history because I was a journalist here. And so I really had to learn the ins and outs of the city. I dove headfirst into all things sports because I'm a sports fan. I played soccer for 14 years. My dad's a high school football coach. I went to my first football game at like 3 months. Like, I love sports. And so being in a city that had so much sports at my leisure, that was also something that highly captivated me. And I wanted to learn more and I wanted to do all the stories. And then my first ever Indy 500 experience, I've been around NASCAR, okay? But baby, Indy 500, oh my God. So leading up to that, learning about the history and learning about how intentional Indy was designed for this particular type of sport and race. I could go on and on. There were a lot of things that piqued my interest that I wanted to tell stories about.
100%. And I think that's so interesting because I read that you had said Indy checked all the boxes for you. And I was wondering what other boxes were there to check for you from these cities that you had some really incredible experiences in.
Yeah. So I said before I moved to Indy, I prayed that it would be a season of healing. It's been a wild one. It's definitely been that. But I needed certain things for that to be possible. I needed the ability to have an outdoors environment, an environment that has hikes and trails. I also have 2 wiener dogs. Like, we like to be outside.
Yeah.
So I needed something outdoorsy because I love being outdoors. Nature is very healing for me, and being in environments and cities that prioritize that was important. Having access to wellness places and a variety of wellness, as well as food, because I love to eat and I needed versatility. And being in the Midwest, I also liked that I'm a driver. I love to take road trips.
Okay.
And so the placement of Indianapolis and the crossroads of America, it makes so much sense. And being able to like hop in my car and be able to drive anywhere else out of here if I wanted to leave, then that's great as well. And also Indy introduced me to Chicago, and Chicago changed my life. So either way, from that to also being in a city that was still large but felt small. And there's some kind of hometown-esque about Indianapolis that, as a transplant, being able to build a community and a tribe and a village here and have only been here for 2 years, like that speaks to the quality of people here. And I also wanted to be in a city that prioritized the arts. And that was something that I was learning by way of moving here. And then what I've seen over the past 2 years, it's blown my mind.
Thank you for sharing all that. You talked about a lot of things that have come up in previous conversations from other folks that have moved here. We've had a couple gems. Demel Bolden comes up to mind. He called it the big city. And I was just like, I don't think I've heard anybody ever call Indy that. But I've doing the show has given me even greater appreciation of the city that I've been in for so long. Just because there is so much here that when you've lived here, grown up here, or spent a significant amount of time here, you might not realize is there. I think some of that falls I think a lot of that falls on how we market or create visibility around those things. And I appreciate you bringing up wellness and just community in general, like finding the different pockets of community that you needed to have when coming here. I think wellness communities is not something that people think about when they think about Indianapolis. Can you talk a little bit more about that community that you've been able to find here?
Yeah. So wellness has always been something that's a priority in my life. Like I said, I played soccer for 14 years. I tore my ACL twice, but I've rehabbed it multiple times. And so this last time I said, you know what? I'm not doing this rehab ever again. I did it for like 1 year and 9 months. And I was like, I really need to get serious about lifting weights, because once I stopped playing soccer when I was 18, like I went to college and I was still working out, I was still running, but wasn't like nearly as disciplined. And I was doing way too much back then. So wellness really for me, it's deeper than just being healthy. It's quite literally the thing that keeps me sane. I have to move my body. Movement is medicine. I have seen what happens when I don't move my body, and knowing how important mental health is for me, I pair the two together. Mental health and wellness go hand in hand for me. And so moving here, it was imperative that I find a community, because I like working out on my own, but there's something different about doing it with people. Community is important for me in all aspects of my life. I was a community-focused journalist. I love community because you can't do it alone. People need people. And I realized while being here, I had that through my gym, and that introduced me to other communities. But really, the last year, I've been introduced to so many more wellness communities, like the yogi community here. There are so many Black yogis and POC yogis here, and it is amazing. And the funds that are here and the initiatives that are here to get more people that look like us to become yoga teachers. So many resources. That's a community within itself. There are communities where there are women that literally lift, like women who lift, like, and go and be moving heavy stuff. There are Pilates communities here. There are communities like Paradigm by Ajani who allow you to have wellness mixers where you're able to network while also being healthy, while also being able to expand what your wellness needs are or how to connect to that. There are communities of people here that, like Omni, one of the gyms that I work out at now, phenomenal, a holistic approach to wellness. And there's people that do it all there, from the nutrition to the lifting. So, I mean, I could go on and on. And it's interesting, even like Canal Squad Indie, like I'm coming across all new ones. I just found out about 2 run clubs that are here. So I think it's interesting. I've had a lot of different conversations with people that are from Indy, and it's always interesting to hear that perspective from a person that's here, because I believe sometimes you have to leave a place and come back to appreciate it. And me traveling and being in a lot of different places, I think I have a different kind of lens of how I look at cities because I'm not from here. So I'm looking at all the benefits, and I could, harp on all the other things that aren't great, but there's a lot of things that are. And wellness communities are one of those things. And it's one of, like, you can either keep yourself away from it or lean into it. So sometimes it's not a matter of it not being here. It's just a matter of you not knowing. And that's okay. And being able to put down the pride and ego and say that you don't know everything and know everybody or know all the things that are happening here will likely open up the ability for you to be connected to way more things. And that's what happened to me. And by way of networking events, like to constantly keep meeting people in these spaces where they overlap is also a beautiful reminder too.
Yeah, just to be open to the opportunity. I think it is so interesting because I see that a lot from, particularly in the Asian American community. It's like young people want to leave because there is seemingly no community here for us, which I've come to find is not true. There is community here. It's just a lack of visibility has kept people from seeing, oh, there is something for me to come back to outside of just the corporate 9-to-5, whatever that might be. So I appreciate you highlighting those things and just even speaking truth to the idea that it can exist. And not only that it can, but it does. For someone who is trying to enter into that space, who is from here and is approaching it from the mindset of, I don't know where to start. What would you tell them as someone who has come here as a transplant and found their way into?
Well, I like to call myself the queen of networking. I have learned how to network since I was, now like 15, so like half my life. And I believe in going to events. I believe in getting active in the communities. It's interesting because people say they want to be a part of a community, but then you don't show up for the events to support the communities that are already already being a community for you. So I think sometimes it truly takes taking the first step. I feel like people have this like A through Z, like, oh, well, then this is not going to happen. And then what happens if these people say this? No, simply go to one event, go try something different, go out of your comfort zone, because all the ways in which I've built community have existed outside of my comfort zone. While I went to places that I was initially attracted to by way of passion, I still had to place myself out of my comfort zone, going to events alone. And also, I mean, I came to Indianapolis by way of a job, but I stayed in Indianapolis by way of community because my life flipped on its axis last November. And I went from a situation that was steady and what I thought was going to be mine for the next few years to like completely different. So when I talk about building community, it's a lot different too, because people could say, oh yeah, you have a different level of access by way of journalism because you know about these events and you know that. Oh, well, baby, that was only my first 13 months here. Like these past 11 months have been by way of me putting myself out there, going to
Right.
events. I hop in people's DMs all the time. I am not ashamed. I am not ashamed to ask people to say hello, to take the first step and take some initiative. Because if you're sitting around waiting for life to happen or waiting for something to fall out of the sky and slap you in the face, well, I do believe in divine alignment. I don't believe you should be chasing nothing, but I do believe you should take inspired action, because you can't tell me that you want to be a part of the music scene, but then you not ever at any of these music events.
Yep.
Or you already see somebody that's doing something that you're interested in, and maybe by way of ego say, oh, well, if they're already doing it, you know, like, what are they going to do? Or I don't believe in gatekeeping. There's enough light for everybody to shine.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not about to collaborate, hit some people's DMs, go and try to start following, especially if somebody's already doing what you're interested in. I guarantee you there's somebody that's likely tied to it.
Yeah.
And there's a way that you can get invested in it. And most of the time, it literally takes the first step. A DM, a call, a showing up at a networking event, trying something different, maybe getting out of the comfort zone of what you've always seen your city to be and start seeing it through the lens of a person who's not from here. Because then you're finding out about gyms, food places, new gyms, new networking events. I mean, there's a lot, and there's so much talent in this city.
Yeah.
This city is thriving in certain aspects, surviving in other aspects, just as many other cities. With the good comes the bad, but there is a ton of good in this city. And there are so many creatives and there's so much talent. And that's something that has attracted me to stay in Indy. Because why would I have to leave Indy when I've already created what I need in Indy? Because Indy already got what I need. I always say, when people ask me how I like Indy, I'd be like, what you want, baby? Because we got it. And it's just a matter of being able to be connected.
Yeah.
Like, you need connection. If anything I learned from the pandemic, that's another reason why I do go out to events, because I remember the time when we couldn't.
Yeah.
I remember the time where this wasn't possible. So now that we can do this, I'm going to take full advantage.
Yeah. I can attest to taking that first step, because that is how this conversation happened. I saw you at Shreese. You were hosting at the Hi-Fi, and I was like, I got to talk to that person because she's doing an amazing job. And then I was talking to mutual friend Anthony Murdoch, and he's like, oh yeah, she's hosting my thing coming up. And I was like, well, of course now I got to go up there. So I came up to you and you were super kind and gracious to just be like, yeah, sure. I would be totally interested to come on your podcast. Random stranger that I've never met.
You had great energy. Energy never lies.
Yeah, well, and you did as well. I mean, that was what attracted me to wanting to have a conversation with you in the first place. I'm like, I need to find out who this person is. How do I not know who this is in the first place? And again, it's just speaking to that idea of just taking that first step and putting yourself out there. Talking about wellness and mental health too being really the crux of this whole journey that you've been on. You talked about 11 months ago, you had that switch up, life got turned on its head, had to make that change. I was wondering if you could share where you are now in your wellness journey and how that changed from that moment 11 months ago.
Yeah, so as we've mentioned, I've been in journalism and doing these different jobs, freelance, from college internships all the way through like my 20s. So the past decade has been spent for that. And I have sacrificed a lot of my personal wellness in pursuit of career. And from like the lack of sleep, lack of proper nutrition, not great habits, I have done a lot to survive in a career that was adrenaline-based, highly quick, like very fast-paced. And I realized that had the situation not happened to me 11 months ago, I would have likely continued to justify the less I was giving myself in the pursuit of one of my dreams.
Sure.
And when that happened, for me to have to reckon with what I was sacrificing and what I was willing to get for a reward, I realized that I can't sacrifice my wellness. None of this matters if you don't have health.
Yeah.
The moment your health becomes a question, nothing matters. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your account. It doesn't matter what car you drive, what clothes you have on. Health, it's stable. Like it's something that I've had to learn through family, through friends. If you don't prioritize it, your body will stop.
Yeah.
It will stop. And so understanding that and having to take a radical amount of accountability for where I was lacking in that arena, because I was still working out and that's
Sure.
fine. But there was other things that I need to balance, like getting more sleep
Yeah.
and being able to navigate my mental health better and
Yeah.
having those types of conversations. And so now, as we are ending September, I've been through quite a time recently. But overall, wellness-wise, I feel very blessed that I am still showing up for myself. I'm still going to the gym. I
Yeah.
started boxing, about to be out here with
Hey,
these
okay.
lethal hands soon. I'm still doing yoga. I'm finding ways to move my body more intentionally every day, whether that's through stretching, whether it's walking. I'm also taking like actual rest, like
Yeah.
where I just like don't do anything. I realize creatives need just as much time to not do things
Right.
as you are doing things.
You got to turn it off sometimes.
And I've had to like really give myself a lot of grace with that, because coming from such an adrenaline inducing career, I always felt like I had to be on the go.
Yeah.
And I realized that being busy is something that is just separating me, A, from God, and also from just my overall purpose of rest, because I was not sent here to be a worker bee, okay?
Sure.
And I need balance. And so now being able to restore balance while also navigating life's life, I am very grateful that I have much better coping mechanisms now than I even did 11 months ago
Yeah.
and definitely like years ago. So I feel good. And I'm
Good.
giving myself more credit for all that I am doing to stay good and grounded. So we're trying, and we're all, day by day. Every
Yeah.
day looks different,
Yep.
but I'm learning that even if I only got 1%, that I need to love myself the same as I do on the days I got 99.
Right.
So that's I need to, and that's what I'm having compassion for myself in this season for.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks a lot to this idea of, well, you've talked a lot about how were the worker bee,
Mm-hmm.
but you had this realization that like, I'm not here to be that. There is so
Mhm.
much more I could give were I able to appropriately rest, appropriately tend to my wellness and well-being, not only physically, but our mental health, which I think goes to like the social media problem of we see the result, but not the work, the process that we undertake to get to the picture that we post on our grid. If you weren't able to reach this point of good, I don't know that you're leaning into opportunities like New York Fashion Week. Is this you recently walked multiple events,
Yeah.
were there for what seemed like a week, but seemed like you were doing big things. Is this your
Yeah.
first New York Fashion Week to do anything with?
Yeah.
Amazing.
These conversations are so important, because in seasons where I am wondering if I'm doing enough, if I am
You
on
just
the
said
right
you're picking
track,
up boxing, you might be doing too many things.
and realizing how incredibly hard one can be on themselves, and how we can sit in our lows a lot longer than we give ourselves credit to sit in our highs. And it's interesting because, New York Fashion Week was 3 weeks ago. I was there for 8 days. That was my first ever New York Fashion Week, but my second ever Fashion Week. My first one was actually Paris back in March. But the irony in all of this is I just started teaching myself how to walk on runways in December of 2023. So I had been modeling, I've been on the camera side, but
Yeah.
I've never walked in a show. I haven't ever done runways. And now in September of 2024, we've done 6 shows. I've been on 9 runways and been international for 2 of them.
Yeah.
And New York Fashion Week. So I got a thing with 3s. I was born in March. 3 was my soccer number. I believe good things come in 3 for me. So I had already had 2 fashion shows booked before I got to New York Fashion Week. They all came together very serendipitously. I went with a designer for New York Fashion Week that I went to Paris with, so that was a beautiful experience. And then the second designer, by way of a DM, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be in New York. I love y'all's brands. Like, y'all need some more models. Like, what's up?
Amazing.
And then that ended up being a paid opportunity. So that was just a beautiful experience within itself. And the third opportunity, I didn't have this third opportunity when I was in New York. I didn't have a ticket. I wasn't even supposed to be at the show. And it's actually a designer that's here from Indianapolis. And it was his first ever New York Fashion Week for Street Dream Apparel. And it was interesting because I was never supposed to be there. Like, that wasn't the original plan a week before I got to New York. And it ended up working out that on my 7th day in New York, I got to do my 3rd and final show for the week. And I got to do photo shoots while I was out there. I got to go to shows. I was around a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
New York came together in such a beautiful way because I literally went there with $1 and a dream. And New York all came together actually by way of rejection because I had a different plan for New York, but then found out that the show I really wanted to cast for, I didn't get. So 4 days before I actually went to New York, I had to change my complete plan. And it only happened because of rejection. And I was so grateful that I still persisted and still figured out a way to be there because originally I was only supposed to be there for 4 days.
Right.
And then I ended up being there for 8 and had so much more of a beautiful experience that was exceedingly and abundantly more than I could have asked for. And that was just 3 weeks ago. And I literally got back from New York Fashion Week, hosted Indie Night Market at literally that Saturday night. And that Sunday, I was like, okay, so like, what's next? Like, okay, like I got to figure out like what's next. And it's like, girl, you didn't even give yourself time to be like, you were in New York City. Like you were in New York City. And and last year I wrote in my journal in November after everything was happening, I was like, yeah, I want to walk on runways. I want to be in fashion weeks. Woo. And so to know that in less than a year, to see this happening in such a way, because yeah, people see the pictures.
Yeah.
But you don't see the sleepless nights. You don't see the insomnia. You don't see the not eating. You don't see the gym. Like, you don't see the work.
Right.
The work, because, yeah, that's a beautiful moment. But the amount of faith that it took to get to that moment, like when I say I went to New York with $1 and a dream, I am not playing.
Yeah.
And I was in New York and I survived New York and thrived in New York at a time where I had so many other personal things happening. So it's like, even I'm looking at my grid and stuff and I see people like, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, oh yeah, like we love to see you doing all these big things. And like, this is great. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
But like, really, I'm fighting for my life out here. Like
Right.
the what's happening behind the scenes, what you don't see, there is a lot, like there is burden in the success and there is beauty in the struggle.
Yeah.
And while I have been going through it, I am very grateful that I have this perspective and this resilience and this perseverance, because had I not experienced all that I've had to navigate these past 11 months, I wouldn't have the faith to be like, oh yeah, like we're going to New York. Like
Yeah.
even going to Paris, like it's so I just, yeah, I'm gonna keep figuring out how to move forward. But there are a lot of things that I have. If nothing happened for me for the rest of the year, I have been blessed in such a way. If I could just sit in my success, I would be more than grateful. So I think having that mindset now allows me to look at the future, not with this like anxious mentality of what's next. It's more like, okay, so what's the next blessing? Where do
Right.
I need to be present next? Like, and so I'm learning how to flow and not
Yeah.
try to chase and so understanding that I'm going to be exactly where I need to be when I need to be there. I'm not on anybody's timeline. I also like took myself off of this timeline of feeling like I had to post all my memories like when they happened. And I was like, girl, these is your memories.
Right.
Like people will see these memories when you want to give them. And so
Right.
I've had to take some time, even, a step back from social media. And that's at a time where like social media is also my business. So it's like balancing that
Yes.
with your mental health and your successes and also feeling that constant like, okay, so like, what do I have next? Like, what am I? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not about to do that. I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed for all the opportunities that I have, and whatever ones are to come, I will be very grateful and blessed and present for them. And no matter if they get a like, my validation was never in a like
Right.
or a comment or a share. While I appreciate them, that's not the purpose. So learning how to detach from society's expectations so that I can actually thrive where I'm supposed to be at and on my timeline, it's been very freeing. So thank you for the reminder.
100%. Thank you so much for
I'm
sharing.
I'm gonna cry when I get home.
No,
Oh my
thank
gosh.
you so much for sharing. You shared a story recently about how basically talking about this, the idea that you have the time now to give to yourself in a way that you never really had in past seasons.
Yeah.
And it's freeing in multiple ways, but I think the freedom is like you get to be or access and tap into your full self as opposed to just bits and pieces that suit the situation or whatever you might find yourself in. And I feel like the way that you talk about it and the passion and the joy, but also the intentionality that you speak on your story with, I think is so important for people to hear, because it's like, oh, I can then speak on my story in the same way. And I think a lot of people need that affirmation sometimes because we don't always get it. And especially from the places that we need it from. And so wherever it might come from, if that can push you to that next step, to take the next step, to hit the DM, you know, I think it's really important. So I appreciate you coming on the show and giving a little bit of that for people. I have a couple more questions, but I want to slightly pivot and do 2 questions for Liz.
Okay.
You're a foodie.
Yes.
So I want to hit foods real quick.
Okay.
You brought it up a couple times, and I wanted to go there, but now I want to go there and put you on the spot because I want you to hit people with your top 5 lunch spots that you would go to after having finished a workout.
Oh, after finishing.
Sorry, I got really specific because I was going to go general, and then I'm like, no, I got to get a little more specific.
Okay. So definitely, if I'm feeling an acai, I would go to 22 Juicery. Okay.
I love 22.
Gotta do 22 Juicery. I don't know what they put in that thing, but it's so good. Okay. So 22 Juicery. And then if I'm after a workout, I've been pumping that iron. I need some good protein. I'm going to Slapfish. I got to get a lobster roll. I love Slapfish.
Okay.
And then, let's see, where else? Now, sometimes after a workout, I might be feeling a little sushi. I'm a big sushi fan. But for lunch, Mount Fuji.
Yep.
I think, okay, yeah, I can hit them for lunch. This is
I got so specific with the lunch.
Okay,
Maybe I should have just said any post-workout.
Oh, now sometimes after workouts, I'm feeling a big meal.
Yep.
Like some stewed chicken or some jerk chicken. So then I'm going to Jamaica style jerk.
Okay.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that for sure. Yeah. And then let's see what other. Oh, and then honestly, if I just want a simple lunch, I'm just gonna get a salad from. There's this. It's a bar. It's right up Boathouse. It's called Boathouse, and it's over on my side of town. Yep.
Boathouse is great.
They got a good chef salad, and it's right up the street.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah. So that's my 5. Yeah,
those are good. That's a good 5.
Depending on the mood.
Depending on the mood, depending on the workout, that's a good 5. All right, second 5 are brands here in Indy that people need to know about.
Oh, okay. Oh, just sorry because I know a couple of brands. Okay.
They don't have to be in any order, any particular order.
Okay,
just the 5 that you would like to shout out right now.
Okay, so I have to shout out MELI. Okay, yeah, I have to shout out MELI. MELI's given me so many phenomenal opportunities. Also, it does incredible mixers. It's a clothing brand here.
And
Love
you just
MELI.
walked.
Yes, just walked for it. MELI actually is Monty, the owner of MELI, is the person that gave me my first ever runway opportunity. So I am incredibly grateful for him. And he has connected me to so many other arts, fashion, culture, scenes, and spaces. So shout out to MELI, Monty. Ajani. So Ajani Sportswear, I'm connected with that. That's also a twofold. I'm gonna do Ajani and Paradigm together. Okay. It is a fitness apparel brand, but it's also kind of lifestyle. Paradigm is a platform that essentially connects different wellness services with wellness foods and spaces, and you get discounts and there's mixers, and it's a way that you can stay wellness, like you can stay motivated in that aspect of your life while also growing your network and with intentionality and supporting local businesses. So I appreciate that. And also I love the fits. Another person I just walked for. They look great. They feel great. Nike quality. It's good stuff. Okay. So another one, I'm going to do a clothing brand. Another is Street Dream Apparel.
Okay.
And that's what I just walked for in New York Fashion Week. And I love the story, love the vision. The fits are phenomenal. And I love seeing that brand be able to move into their next level in real time. So that was a beautiful experience to be a part of. And there's so many other brands as well. Oh my gosh. Okay, so wait.
That's 3.
That's 3.
Technically 4, but we're calling it 3.
Yeah. And then I know, okay, I'm I was just going to go rapid fire.
If you want to I was just going to say, if you want to rapid fire and just knock out like 10 of them.
Okay. Yeah. So we got Gang Gang, Be Nimble, G4 Unlimited, Murdoch, shout out there, Omni, More Fit. That's where I do my boxing. Sarah Price Photography. She's a phenomenal photographer. Oh my gosh. Let's see. I'm thinking I'm okay. Prime Connects as well. I've had so many great networking events with Prime Connects. They have been phenomenal. I'm trying to think of all the other people that I've done networking stuff with. Okay, like that's all I can think about right now. And if I leave it, it's City Yoga. Oh yeah. Oh, Rhythm and Flow. Yes, if you want to get your body moving and get in. Okay, yeah, I got to stop because then I'm just gonna get overwhelmed. Okay, yeah. Oh, also, BU Wellness. You can get all of they do a lot of things for the community. They help make sure that people get tested and are safe out here. Step Up is another organization as well. Okay, I'm gonna stop because I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed. So I'm gonna stop right there. Mm-hmm.
I love it.
There's a lot of them.
I love it because you've been here for 2 years and you can rattle off more brands than you can even rattle off. You're rattling them off in your brain and you can't even get them all out because there's so many. That speaks to the sheer amount of creative amazingness that is here in the city. Yeah. And for people to not see it at some point becomes willful. But we also can do this part of having a conversation and putting people on in rooms that we're not in, that they're not in, to make sure that they come along with. So thank you for doing that. Lots of brands that we have to bring into the show now. So gonna be in touch.
Thank you for your patience.
All right, I have 2 more questions for you. I'll let you go. You've talked about before understanding what it's like to go a good portion of your life without a voice or being heard. As we come to this close, what is one piece of Lena Pringle advice that you would give to folks who might be feeling that exact feeling right now?
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. If you got to do one pinky toe at a time, 1 centimeter at a time, I don't care how slow it may look, keep going. Keep going. If I had given up on myself at a time where I thought that there was no other options, I would have missed out on the past 11 years of my life. The most incredible things haven't happened to you yet. If you can dream it, you truly can be it. And instead of looking at all that you don't have, radically use what you do have to its capacity. Use all that you have and do all that you can. And I think also my last thing is, it will get better. It will get better. It will get better. And I don't care how dark the season may get. There is always light. There is always light. So if there is any reason to keep going, remember that the best moments of your life haven't even happened yet. And you deserve to get there. And even if you got to claw your way there, baby, as long as I don't care if you crawl, hop, skip, jump, fly, skip, whatever, as long as you don't stop. Because the moment you're stuck is when you stop. That is it. So as long as we are focusing on progression over perfection, better will come. Better will come.
Progression over perfection, better will come. Don't stop. Keep going. Listen to that because there was one piece of advice that wrapped in like 7 other pieces of advice and something else I'm going to throw in that I think is a Lena Pringle piece of advice because I just heard her say it on her social media the other day. If you can't feel it, you can't heal it. So make sure you are tapping into those feelings. Make sure you're tapping into yourself. Yes. Staying true to yourself, checking in with yourself, and checking with your community because that is how we heal is together because we can't do it alone. After this is over, now that we've come to the end, for folks who want to follow you, support you, find you, whatever it might be, how do they do that? Yeah, so my social media handles are the same on every platform. It's Lena Pringle, LENAPRINGLE_. That's it. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok. I also have a website, thelenapringle.com. So if you're ever in need of a host or an MC or a teacher or a fitness instructor or somebody else, if I can't do it,
it,
Amateur boxer.
Listen, and if I can't do it, I likely know somebody that can. I want to stay a connector of people. So in any way that I can help, please send a DM. I do answer DMs as long as they're not weird. But yeah, please reach out. You know, everybody is carrying something. So I just pray that I leave spaces better than I found them. So however I can be of service or help somebody, if you're in need of something, please reach out because I'm literally here to serve.
I appreciate that. You've left this podcast and me better than I was when I came in here earlier today at 1 o'clock. So thank you for that. The great connector, Lena Pringle here. I appreciate you being on the show and sharing so much with us.
Oh, yes. No, thank you so much for having me. This was a beautiful reminder, and I'm deeply grateful that you take the time and the space to have these conversations and give people the opportunity to share pieces of their story that they may not have otherwise. So I appreciate your platform. I appreciate your curiosity and your genuine interest and kindness in people. So continue to do what you're doing. These stories are important. You're important. The work that you're doing is important, and you're very valued. So I appreciate you for sharing this space with me and giving me a few moments to, rattle it off. Hopefully I kept this in time.
You are great. Thank you so much for that. I'm affirmed now, and these are not choked back tears. I'm just feeling really good because you shared that with me. And this is just a Midwest goodbye now. I don't know if you know about that yet, but I'm Midwest goodbying it. So I'm going to wrap it up. New episodes of this show every Tuesday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. ConversationPeacePod.com for the archives and other merch items that are available, I think. And Conversation Peace Pod on all social media platforms if you want to follow us. We've got more community and conversation episodes that are out right now. Make sure you check that out. And until 103, I've been Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Peace. See y'all soon.